Welcome to Recovery the Whole Enchilada, a podcast dedicated to rising stronger together on the journey to wholeness and healing within the recovery community. I'm Peg McDermott, your host, along with my co-host,
Heather Hagaman. Hi, Peggy.
Your birthday girl. Kind of had a birthday recently, didn't you?
I did.
I like it. And today we're going to talk about from perfection to peace and how that ties into the disease of alcoholism when it comes to the problem, how we evolve into a solution. And I know that you had shared recently with some folks on that as you celebrated your anniversary of how many years now?
24 years.
Wow.
And I keep hearing that. I don't know why, Neil Young's song, I'm 24 and there's so much more. Old man, take a look at my... I'm 24 and there's so much more. And it really is so much more. Thank goodness.
Yes, there is a lot more than I could have ever dreamed of. So let's start with you and your celebration and your thoughts around perfection to peace.
Yeah. So it's funny because people will say happy birthday and they say happy anniversary. So I feel like it is the birthday because it is the birth of the day that I chose to let go of the strategy of addiction and walk in a mysterious path of sobriety. And it's interesting because, Peg, I had a lot of rock bottoms the 25 years I was drinking. And someone asked me this time, why July 4th? Like, why was that the day? And I think back, it's funny because I was at the time in a outpatient relapse prevention group, and I was still sneaking alcohol in this group. I would say they were surprised. The people in the group were surprised that I was still having a drink here and there. And I really was only having a drink here and there at that point, but they forced me. They said, you can't be in this group. I mean, the therapist was like, guys, but no, you can't be in this group unless you're sober. I mean, this is ridiculous. So you need to pick a day. And I think that was like the week before July 4th. And I just thought, okay, I'm going to pick July 4th. And because it just seems so perfect, a day of independence, a day of not being dependent on alcohol, the freedom that comes with being independent of it. And of course, I was pretty narcissistic back then. So I just figured those, fireworks could be all about me. So that's kind of how I picked July 4th. Anyway, so this was my 24th anniversary. And I was thinking about a definition of that what my first sponsor had me memorize about what a definition of an alcoholic is. Now, you can substitute addicts, you can substitute person strategy of addiction, but I'm going to use the word alcoholic. And so she said, an alcoholic suffers from low self-esteem, offset by perfectionism and an inability to ask for help. And when she told me back 24 years, when she said that to me, that really landed in my body as truth, but just kind of not just about my drinking, but more about how I had learned to survive in the world. And over the years, I have found that each of those struggles has a spiritual solution. So I took the definition and I chopped it into three arenas. First one was low self-esteem. Let's just start with that. And anybody that's on this journey, trust us, we know this one really well. And here's the thing. It's very interesting to think how, whenever I come around an anniversary, I think to myself, how is my self-esteem today? How is my perfectionism today? Am I asking for help? So I kind of do a little run through in my mind, and I can just tell you with a lot of glee, I am perfectly imperfect. And that has always been very hard for me to say that, but I say it today and I don't feel that. But I feel like that's true. I can be okay with myself today. And actually, laugh at how goofy I am. My gosh. Anyway.
I love that you're so goofy. I love it.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So anyway, so back to the problem of low self-esteem. I mean, I walked in these rooms feeling like I was never enough. I was not good enough. Unless I was achieving, unless I was performing, or being who you needed me to be, because I didn't really know who I was. I was just sort of patterning my life, trying to figure out what the solution was to happiness. But I totally, now look back and see my self-esteem was so low. I did not have any real good self-esteem back when I first came in the rooms. How about you?
Do you think that's a part of the disease, or do you think it's more how we were brought up?
I think we're brought up to be very externally focused, and that we measure all of everything from the outside in, and that we really, a lot of, unfortunately, people didn't understand that all we needed was to be loved, seen, and valued and appreciated for the inside in. And that when we made mistakes, it wasn't a mistake to our inner life. It was a mistake on our outer life of behavior. But what I heard was, when I did something wrong, I became bad. And the behavior was bad, but not only bad, but I became bad. There's something wrong with me. And I think that gets indoctrinated early on. And I think culturally, it's been a way that we've raised kids in the school systems and in our era. We're both in our 60s here, so it's a different kind of time period that our childhoods were managed differently. Yeah, so I think that low self-esteem, then you want to come to the next. So here's the solution. I want to talk about a little bit the spiritual solution, because this in some very very wise literature, there is this statement that the daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. That's something that I really thought a lot about and really leaned into. And also that statement that pain is the touchstone of spiritual growth. Isn't that another one? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I think that was really important in the beginning is I just decided, okay, I just need to show up. I learned to show up no matter how I was feeling. I was feeling whatever it was that I was feeling. And, I volunteered, I shared, when I was shaking, slowly something started to grow in me, and that was dignity and a willingness just by showing up. And there's another statement in the literature is that you don't have to believe, just take the actions and the belief will come.
Yeah.
And that became my new way of life, just that first piece. So everything I do now is, how is this going to affect my self-esteem? Is this gonna inspire me and motivate me, or is this gonna take me down and make me feel bad about myself? And that's kind of how I weigh out my decision making now.
Yeah. And I like what you said about, believing, not thinking our way into good living, right? It's really taking that action, whether we feel like doing it or not. We know there's a deeper part of us and a wiser, higher self that knows I got to do this, or I'm going to revert back to these dysfunctional, destructive patterns of drinking and then acting out and all the things that we did when we were active. And, when you said, that you sort of blended the behavior and your sense of self together, right?
Yes.
Like it was this, like the behavior was bad or not what you had hoped it would be, and that you were bad. And I really had to learn to separate those two things, because I did believe that my behavior made me a bad person. And it was one and the same. And it isn't. It's like separating out what I did wasn't great, but it doesn't make me a bad person. It makes me a sick person trying to get well, but it doesn't make me a bad person. And it took me a long time to unpack that. And, growing up with this sort of sense of shame, which you also shared about, and just trying to be good enough. And that for me was the driver behind my low self-esteem, was just thinking I just wasn't good enough. Because when I grew up, I was brought up by a single parent because my father was a raging alcoholic and my mother left him, thank God. But it didn't get much better for us after she did leave him. You know, if anything, it got worse. And that low self-esteem came from a time when people didn't look it's much more common today to have a single parent raising children. It wasn't common then, and it was looked down upon. There was something wrong with us. And my brother and I always had to sit at the front of the bus because we were always getting in trouble. You McDermott kids are going to get in trouble. And I just, what was installed in me was this sense of, I'm just simply not, I don't fit in and I don't feel good enough. And so my solution to that was to become a workaholic in addition to an alcoholic, and just do so that I felt like I could fit in and I was good enough.
Yeah. And in my own journey, I became very intellectually driven to get the highest grades. And I think a lot of what I was doing, I was just trying to impress people. I mean, but I couldn't, I thought if I impressed you, then I could impress myself, or I'd like myself or something. But yeah,
Did you feel like you could be yourself is the point, or did you even know who you were?
You know, I really didn't know who I was. I knew that I just thought I was weird, Peg.
Weird isn't totally bad. It's like, yeah.
See, I'm just that weird kid. But I was a military kid, so I was always that new kid in class, that weird military kid, you know? And I had a very short amount of time to either become very popular by being an extrovert or become very not seen and visible by becoming an introvert. And it seemed like my role was to become extroverted, and that's how I navigated it. My brother became introverted, and I know other military kids, that was their story. But I was an extrovert. I became the life of the party. And nobody would ever even guess that I didn't like myself. Nobody would ever guess, because I was so much fun, especially with a drink in my hand. And I was, I was always thinking of wild things to do. And I was, yeah. But it's the aftermath of all of that. It's when you look back over what you did that night and you're like, oh gosh, I don't even remember what I said, or I did this or that. It's that shame, guilt, and remorse. And that's just kind of continues to keep that self-esteem not from growing, so that the choices today I make is, how can I take this action and not reap that guilt or that shame or that remorse that I used to? And we've talked about this as the frequency of addiction, because, we can be on the sober path and still be doing things that are harming our self-esteem,
True.
And one thing I was saying is, it's really lousy when, it's one thing when the world is doing things to you and you have no control over it. But what's really lousy is when you're doing these things to yourself, and it's your own hand that's harming you. And that has to end. And so it's progress, not perfection. And so that can lead us to the next part, right? When we have this low self-esteem, what we'll do as a strategy is that we'll offset it and appear to be perfect. So some of us will be really driven to look really good on the outside, right? If I look good, in what I'm wearing and my makeup and all of that, nobody is going to question that I have low self-esteem. But I'll tell you, when I see people all made up and all injected up and all the things going on, to look pretty, I sometimes make up in my mind that they may not be feeling that great inside, and that they're trying to find happiness as an outside job and not an inside job.
I think you're right. I think most of what we're taught is, if you look good on the outside, then you'll fit in and you will be good enough. And I think that's still prevalent today. And I do think that there are people that look fantastic because they feel fantastic inside. It really comes out. It's a glow.
Yes.
And it's also an energy thing. I do think that. So it's like when I've been with people like you, who really are beautiful, and you exude this sense of love and groundedness, and it's not about, it's about how you feel about yourself, and that you love yourself and you're willing to share that with us. And that comes out, and we can feel it. People can feel that. Some people may not be able to identify what that is, but they can feel it. And that's what they remember. People remember how you made them feel. So yeah, perfectionism, is it good enough, was not in my vocabulary. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. It's not. And I would go around and around, whether it's whatever the project is, whatever it is that I'm learning, it's not good enough. And that's an endless cycle.
So the problem for me when it became to perfectionism, and here it is, totally honest here, if I couldn't be the best, then I didn't want to try. Okay. And if I couldn't be amazing, I would just disappear. And then I would drink over the space between who I thought I should be and who I actually was. That was kind of my story. But I do want to share, I love this reading, and it just popped out of me, and I was like, oh my God, this is it right here. Nearly every one of us had wished to do great good, perform great deeds, and embody great ideals. We are all perfectionists who, feeling perfectionism, have gone to the other extreme and settled for the bottle and the blackout.
Mm.
Isn't that amazing?
And so true.
And so true for, for all of us that have this disease, for us. Yeah. And so I think that what was me is that, I needed to learn how to live in the middle and not live in the extremes. And because I was either all or nothing, black and white kind of thinking. And, and so that comes up, I think what happens, the perfectionism turns into humility, that I'm showing up as I am, I'm doing something, honest and consistent. I'm being part of a group and I'm not the star of the group. Okay. And I don't have to be amazing today. I can just be willing, and there was so much emphasis in my family on being perfect because I had, Marine Corps parents. And their propaganda was the Marines are the best, we're the most, athletic, we're the most toughest, we're the strongest, we defy gravity, kind of thinking. And so I know that I really wanted to gain support from my parents. And so by trying to be as perfect as I could, it was my way of getting love, I thought. And it really makes me so sad because I know they loved me, but I somehow twisted it that they loved me for what I did more than who I was. And what I did, what I accomplished, my achievements. And so having that twisted thinking kind of really created sort of a self-hate and a self-disgust and a shame, that and it's sad that I lived a large part of my early years like that.
Yeah, I agree. And it wasn't quite the same in terms of my upbringing because I didn't have a military family, although my father was in the Korean War, but it wasn't really part of our family system because he wasn't around long enough. I mean, he had been around long enough to cause some serious damage.
Yeah.
Until my mom said, bye-bye, I am not going to take this anymore. And that was really brave of her at the time because, she had my grandmother and other family members, and they did help, thankfully. But I saw through my mom, her low self-esteem, and I took it on. And I took it on and I took it on because I didn't want to see her continue to go through so much pain. So I said, I can take this from her by my achievements. And as the firstborn, I was the hero of my family. And my job was to make my mother feel better and feel better about herself. So she lived vicariously, I think, through me. And I felt that pressure unconsciously. And I knew that if I didn't stack up and do what it was that I thought she wanted me to do and be proud of me to do, that I was just really not going to level up as a human. And, as a daughter and firstborn, I really wanted her to be proud. And I wanted to show her, Mom, you are worthy and lovable. And I'm going to show that you are by all of my achievements. And that's a lot of pressure on someone. And that really did ignite my drinking because I
Right.
knew I wasn't going to be able to ever fulfill that role, although I was trying for many years. And it went from my mom to my partners, to some friends. So I took on this heavy role, this difficult identity in I can fix you. I can help you by fixing you. And that's what it morphed into this perfectionism. I can fix it. I can fix you. And if I do well, then you'll look good. In the meantime, I'm doing well and I still feel like shit. I really do. And I was like, I'm achieving here, but I don't feel any better. If anything, the more I achieve, the crappier I feel because it's not filling me up. It's not fulfilling me. I still feel as empty as I did before.
Yeah, the perfectionism is, and we can really let that go from perfectionism to peace. That's kind of what we started talking about. And just to kind of finish the third part of this definition, which I think is just so solid, is that an inability to ask for help. I can't think of anything more revealing when I'm aware of people that can't ask for help. And I see that as well, I don't know, an indicator that there's something going on, but there's definitely something going on where I thought I had to do things alone, and I thought needing help was weak. All right. Or I didn't want to be a burden, so I didn't ask, and so I stayed stuck. But I will tell you the most craziest story. I didn't share this, but I'll share it here, is that I was having a lot of pain in my side. And I was like, I didn't want to go to the hospital. And my daughter was like, you have to call somebody. You got to get somebody. I'm going to call an ambulance. And I said, no, you're not going to call an ambulance. And so she put my coat on me. She opened my car. She must have been 12 years old. She started the car. She put me in the car with my coat on and my purse. And I drove myself holding my side to the hospital where I was having a appendix almost rupturing.
Oh, my goodness.
But that is a demonstration or an example of how nuts we get. I mean, really, seriously, it's just, and I know that the solution is I had to let go of my pride and my control and of my plans, right? And the solution is surrender. And that third step prayer, affirmation, making a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of a higher power. There's that serenity prayer that helps us. But these are the things I had to do. And anytime I don't want to ask for help, I hear a loud voice now in my head, Peg, that says, you have to ask for help. And I go right back to that poor little daughter of mine putting me in that car and me driving away by myself to the hospital. It's so sad to me. That motivates me from this point. It really motivated me to change.
Which also ties into humility, right?
Yes,
the
totally.
asking for help. It threads through a lot of the solution is humility. And because it's really learning what is it that my higher power wants me to do? What is the best path forward? It's to ask for help, because then I am giving someone the gift of being able to help me. And it is a
Yes.
gift. And not
Yes.
withholding that because of pride, because I don't want to be a burden, which was a biggie. And because I didn't want to feel vulnerable. I didn't want to feel judged. And and I have. And I'm sure you've probably experienced this yourself. It's like when you've asked for help, and I've sometimes gotten the response, you don't know that by now? And that is a shaming thing to say to somebody. And what I've learned today is, oh, I wonder why they would feel the need to say something like that to me versus me taking that cloak of shame. Yeah, you know what? I should know better by now. I don't go there anymore. Part of me wants to, but there's another part of me that has gotten a lot healthier. And it's, you know what? That's not the truth. You don't need to listen to that. You're exactly where you're supposed to be right now. So pray for them. Oops. And that works. And there are times when, I wish it would go as smoothly. Sometimes it doesn't. Depends on my spiritual condition.
Yeah, and and this all of these three parts to this definition, it doesn't come naturally, and and I think this final piece here of letting go, I mean, I had to realize I was a fixer and I was a fighter, that I learned to trust something greater. And I think that's a
Well,
lot of the journey, is to ask and then to listen.
mm-hmm.
And, and that's the turning point. So for these past 24 years, Peg, I've been, thinking about this definition. I've seen it play out, continue to play out. It's so on par, this definition. And so I continue to work on these three parts. But I do want to share a little story, if we have a couple more minutes. I was driving down the road with my little 9-year-old grandson sitting next to me, and he picked up my chip that was in the console of the car, and he's looking at it, and he's, "What's this, Mimi?" And I go, "It's my chip." He goes, "What does this chip mean?" And he's looking at it, and I said, "Well, I get that chip every year. I go and I pick up that chip, and it's to celebrate another year of not drinking." He goes, "Oh." He goes, "Well, I'm never going to have to pick up a chip." And I said, "Why is that?" He goes, "Because I'm never going to drink, Mimi." And then I said, "I'm going to put this date down right here, right now. In 2024, this is, you announced this to me. But
Exactly.
what a sweet moment, you know?
So sweet.
Yeah,
He's like an old soul, that young
really.
man. He really is. He's a
Yeah.
sweet boy. And, what do you do as we wrap this up to maintain your healthy spiritual condition? What is it that you do?
So much of it is an all-day affair with my higher power. It begins with thank you. It begins with just noticing things that I want to be grateful for. That's how I kind of start my morning. I have to move and have to breathe. I have to think about healthy food I'm going to put in my body. I think about who can I reach out to that may need a little support. People call me, I listen, I get outdoors. I do what I call my forest bathing, where I walk in the woods and I hug trees. I'm just kidding. I don't hug the trees, but I do walk in the woods,
Mm-hmm.
and I love looking around. And so it's this constant connection. We talk about a spot check inventory of ourselves and our behaviors. Well, I do a spot check inventory of, how am I breathing? Am I in my body? Am I taking care of myself? How is my love meter right now? And basically I'm trying to fill my cup so that I am love. There's an incredible teacher that used to just say, "Just be love." What I do, Peg.
I love it.
That's what I try to do. Just be love.
I think that self-awareness is what's key, because for so long, I didn't know who I was. And I wasn't really conscious of how I talked to myself. And today, for my spiritual health, I do pay attention to that. I pay attention to, I'm more self-aware, like how am I feeling right now? And how am I breathing right now? And if I'm feeling something, where in my body am I feeling it? And allowing that rather than suppressing it. And then if I need to talk with someone about it, I do.
Yeah.
Because I know there's peace on the other side of that. There's no peace for me if I suppress and I box things up. And I think of myself as a burden if I share that with others. There's no peace in that for me. But I do believe my higher power wants me and you, and I think others, to walk on this planet with joy and peace, especially peace. And that asking for help, doing the very things that I was terrified of doing before I got here. And that's one of the reasons I drank so much, because I was so afraid all the time. And, fear has its place in our lives. It's supposed to warn us, right? And what I would do is take it to such an extreme that it would cause such upheaval in my nervous system that I would need to drink. And what I've learned is that my higher power can help me navigate those feelings, and that they're not going to kill me. And it gives me enough space within myself to help others. And I think that touches on what you shared, the please keep me sober today, the thankfulness throughout the day, noticing things throughout the day, thanking the higher power at the end of the day, and just learning that not everything is about me. I don't have to take everything personally. And there's peace in that too.
Yes, there is. So it's good. It's good.
It is all good. And thank you for joining us on this episode of Recovery, the Whole Enchilada. If you connected with today's episode and what we shared, please do share it, like it, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Your feedback does help us shape future conversations. And I believe the next time we're going to be talking about finding purpose, which should be a very thoughtful and meaningful discussion, because I know for a long time I was purposeless, and it's good to have that direction, right? So we'll see you next time, and remember, we love you, and that your recovery story with all its flavors, textures, and complexities matter deeply. So until next time, stay strong and keep growing.